Uh-oh.
Oh, it is. Would someone from another site say something so we can see if your site comes up on our screen? Sioux Falls, are you there?
Yes, Sioux Falls is here.
Okay.
We have two Sioux Falls.
There.
We have the large conference room and the small one, too.
Perfect.
And
Okay,
rehab centers here.
Okay. So we know all the Sioux Falls sites are on. How about Aberdeen DHS?
We are here, Janet.
Okay.
She'll be coming back to you, yeah.
Brookings?
Brookings is here.
Okay. Chamberlain?
Chamberlain is here.
The DDN at Northern in Aberdeen, are you guys on? Make sure you mute your sites if you're not talking, please. Mitchell DHS? We're here. Rapid City?
We're here.
Okay, are both the Rapid City sites on, the DLR site and the DHS site?
DHS is, and I believe the DLR.
Okay. Spearfish?
The other rapid site's on.
It's here.
Okay, good. Watertown?
Watertown is here.
Okay. Yankton?
Yankton's here.
And Huron?
Huron's here.
Okay, good. Well, it looks like we successfully got all our sites on, so that's a good thing. Make sure you guys mute your site if you're not talking, and then if you want to ask any questions, unmute and then remute after you are done talking. This session is being recorded, and it is going to be available out on our DRS homepage. On the right hand, or not at the right hand, excuse me, the left hand side, there's some drop down buttons there, and there's a provider resource tab on there. So if you ever want to view this again, it will be on that site. I'm going to turn it over to, I'm going to say a couple of things about our sign-in sheet. Make sure everyone signs in because that's our proof that you were at the training for any of your continuing education hours. The facilitator at each location will give you a certificate at the close of this training. So if you need one of those certificates of attendance, just make sure and ask your facilitator at your location for that. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Kim Holberg in Aberdeen, and she is going to introduce the presenter.
Okay, thank you, Janet. I would like to introduce Melody Lane, who is the Information and Communications Manager from the Department of Labor and Regulation. Melody serves Department of Labor in a dual role. She's a supervisor in the Labor Market Center and is responsible for all of their print and online releases for the labor market statistics and related resources. Her challenge is to ensure the numbers and data the Labor Market Information Center's economic analysts gather through various statistical programs are presented meaningful and useful information. Melody is also responsible for the Labor Market Information website and their virtual labor market data system. Additionally, Melody serves Department of Labor as a webmaster for the agency's entire website, which accounts for the majority of her time. She just completed a major overhaul of their website, which an all-new site that launched December 1st. Melody has 30 plus years of experience with labor market information and Department of Labor. She began her career as an information specialist working on labor market information print publications. Over the years and with technology, her role has changed and expanded to include oversight of all print and online dissemination of information. So with that, I would like to welcome Melody and thank you for being here, and I will turn it over to her.
Thank you, Kim. Before I get started, I just wanted to let everyone know that I love questions and it helps me remember what I'm forgetting to cover. So please, anytime I'm covering anything, feel free to jump in with a question. And I know there's a little bit of lag with DDN. Sometimes it works better than others, but we'll just take that time and answer your questions as you have them. And like I say, I love questions. It helps trigger more thoughts in me of what I should be covering or something I'm forgetting. So please feel free to jump in with any questions. As Kim mentioned, we did just launch a new website for the Department of Labor and Regulation, and as we were reviewing the old site, we really felt that our core users, job seekers and employers, those services for them were kind of getting lost. After several of the regulatory agencies came under the we used to be Department of Labor. When we became Department of Labor and Regulation and those regulatory agencies came under us, we got so broad that I think our website just kind of built to the point where we were not focusing quite like we should on those basic job seeker services. So we did really try to address that with the new site. And so before I get into the Labor Market Information Center information and our website, I just wanted to touch briefly on some of those changes in the Department of Labor and Regulation site as a whole. So if you'll notice here, there's Find a Job and Post a Job buttons. We had those before. Similar buttons on our old site, but this underneath part, more services for job seekers. I want to just point out some of the things under that because here again, I think we really tried to strengthen the visibility of that information for job seekers. So if we go to job search tools, you'll see that you can do the search for jobs online. And one of our main database, of course, the state's largest job seeker database or largest database of job openings is SD Works. And I wanted to mention too that within just the next few months, early in 2017, the South Dakota Works, I don't know if you're familiar with it or not now, if you go out and look at job postings or employers can post jobs. That is going to be changing to a privately vended system by Geographic Solutions. It's a nationwide company that does these kind of sites for many, many states. And that the transition to that SD Works that's hosted by Geographic Solutions is going to really enhance also services for job seekers. And I asked the gentleman in our office this morning who's in charge of that whole rollout of that new system, what he would say are the top 3 benefits that new system will add. And he had some very good points. The one is a direct tie-in with the labor market information at all steps of the job seeking phase, and it will really enhance what we call real-time LMI, or in other words, all the data that we can get back out of that system. So and so is applying for a job in this, an employer has listed X job today. It's that up to the minute information that the database itself has, it's really a powerful source. So it'll be integrating that information with the traditional job seeking tools. Another benefit will be that users can set up their own customized recruiter to look for jobs for them. So there's a lot of good things to come there. And then another fact is that in addition to all the jobs that are posted by employers on the system or with SD Works, we'll be spidering all other kinds of jobs online, from an individual employer's website to, Monster and some of the bigger ones. It spiders all those information, all those job openings, all that information as well. So when an applicant goes into SD Works to look for a job, they'll have access to all of that job opening information. So those are kind of the three big benefits that we're looking forward to rolling out. But back to our site, from under job search tools, I mentioned then the link to SD Works, and right now that's the current system, but like I said, within a few months it will be an all new system there too. And then as far as getting individualized services, you can link there and look at the services that are available at our local offices across the state. And you may have to remind me, but in a minute I'll show you. We have a map out there that shows where our offices are located and so on. Some of you are here at the sites now, so and then you can learn the basics, applications, and interview, soft skills, and job fairs. Well, let's go look at that page once. We have general employment applications out here. So say if an employer doesn't have their own job application, we have these generic ones out there, and employers will also use these sometimes and then just customize them. So we have those out there in various formats, fillable, PDF, or Microsoft Word, also fillable. We also have them in Spanish. There's tips on keys to successful interviewing, a video, some coverage of soft skills. We have a calendar of job fairs, and this type of calendar is also new to the new DLR website, so that you can search on a particular date or search for a specific location. But down below, we will have listed any of the upcoming job fairs that are offered in a certain area. And that can be everything from, like the first one you see listed here, United States Postal Service doing a job fair in Sioux Falls. So it would be one specific employer just doing a little bit of emphasis on openings there, having difficulty filling, to a large job fair like when the Aberdeen area has their job fair that our office is involved with a little later in the winter or early spring. Going back to the job search tools, and I'll mention that on this left-hand side, we tried to always make it easy to get back to where you started from. So I clicked on the job search tools there. The other thing we cover on the website is our job search assistance program. And I don't know if any of you are familiar with that or not, but most of the local offices offer these job search assistance program workshops, if you will, every so often. Of course, in the larger areas, they're offered more often than others. But and again, you can go to our events calendar and find out when JSAP, as we call them, the Job Search Assistance Program, are offered. And it looks like I need to change a left menu here when I get back. So we'll go back to Job Seeker Services. I mentioned the directory of our job service offices. So this is the map showing where all those services are. And if you click on any of those, you can go directly to their page. We'll pick Rapid City since we have several sites in Rapid City today. And you can look at upcoming events in that area, and that points back to that calendar. It'll bring up the upcoming events in that particular area. You can look at a featured employer or a featured business. Not all the local offices chose to do this. They have more limited areas, but this is an example of one that does. And then there will be a link right within that page to look at specific openings right now that Black Hills Corporation has listed, or that featured employer has listed. Covers their service area, and so if you click on those links, you can see the cities that area serves or the counties. This one, some of the offices have itinerant offices or smaller offices that they staff quite often just 1 or 2 days a month or a week, just depending on the size of the area. So you can find out all that information, basically helping you and your clients find when, if you want in-person help, where the closest location is and when would be the best time to connect with them. Does anyone have any questions so far on kind of the job search tools that we've covered? Okay. We'll go back to job search tools then and look at, there is other programs covered too, from layoff services to some of the programs that you're probably far more familiar with than I am, like TANF for temporary assistance for needy families and the supplemental nutrition assistant programs. So we tried to be a resource to link users to other agency programs too available for them. There's information on veteran services and veterans preferences. The Work Opportunity Tax Credit is another good program to be aware of when working with clients. It's a tax incentive for employers, so that's a good opportunity for some on-the-job training for those who qualify. Then if we go back to home to DLR, and I wanted to just look at these workforce services for individuals, that button there, right under the more services for job seekers. And a lot of the information that will eventually get you to is kind of duplicative, the same kinds of services under the more services for job seekers, but it takes more of a button approach and kind of divides things up a little differently. So, for example, we have adult education, career exploration, find a job, and that links to SD Works again. Information on the National Career Readiness Certificates, training opportunities, the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, WIOA, and so on. But I want to focus right now on the career exploration because I think that's probably most key to what we were to talk about today. So you'll see again that DLR is here to help with references to our local offices where you can get help at that local area, and a link to our Labor Market Information Center and the specific publications and resources that we have available for users who are exploring careers, considering a career move or making an initial or a secondary or beyond career decision. And I'll cover those in a little bit later, some of those things, those specifics that our Labor Market Information Center has. But you can see a link to the My Skills, My Future website, and that's really a wealth of information too from the U.S. Department of Labor. So we tried to just combine all the resources for career exploration under that area. The individuals with disabilities, I assumed, would be of special interest to this group. So again, just kind of links to other resources for job seekers with disabilities, from a video, disclosure video, to best practices, and so on. If at any point while you're working, if you get a chance to work with this website and think of resources that we don't have listed here that we should, I'd greatly appreciate it if you'd just drop me an email or let me know that, and we will certainly get them added. Would really appreciate that feedback. So we have national resources as well as the state ones. So. And then the other one I wanted to point out under workforce services for individuals is the training opportunities. And that covers everything from registered apprenticeships to senior community service employment program. And then there's also a list of the approved training programs. And what those are the approved under WIOA training programs that our department has approved for participation, for funding dollars for WIOA dollars. And so these are all the programs that are approved. So, and to meet those, to be approved, they have to meet a certain labor market demand and wage. It has to be considered a high demand, high wage field. And the Labor Market Information Center is who kind of sets that benchmark for them using the data that we have available. And I'll cover those a little bit, those high demand, high wage occupations, a little more in depth when we get to the Labor Market Information Center site. Bear with me here as I review my notes and make sure I'm not forgetting anything. Okay. I think that's it for the Department of Labor website in general. And does anyone have any questions at this point before we take a closer look at the Labor Market Information Center? Any questions? Okay. Let's go take a look then at the Labor Market Information Center site. And I'll just show you a few things I wanted to highlight here on the home page. The three little buttons up here at the top. And we'll touch on those, and then we'll get into more of the nitty-gritty of the career exploration and planning pieces. But these are the What's New button does just that. It kind of highlights whatever we have new at the time in the Labor Market Information Center, whether it's a data release or if it's a new product, a new career information product or whatever. We'll always try to do a little tidbit here with a link into it. When you hear the national unemployment rate being released, we release that from our office too, and always have a little blip about that. So that's usually the first Friday of every month. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics releases the national unemployment rate and non-farm wage and salaried worker levels for the most current month. So we do a little highlight on that each time. Oops, I don't even know where I went there. Back to the home page. We also have an economic snapshot page that we maintain, and the reason we put that together is we would get a lot of questions on, okay, you have a database, I could go look all this up, but just tell me what the current unemployment rate is in the state, or sometimes they'd call and want the national one. Or we also have the data available on here for the two metro areas, Rapid City and Sioux Falls. So the economic snapshot is just our at-a-glance look at any point in time if you want to know the current unemployment rates or what the labor force size is in any of those areas. It's always the most current data available at any time. So you'll probably notice, I guess right now they do happen to be all the same with the exception of U.S. U.S. data is always released earlier, like I mentioned, the first Friday. So you'll see that they're not necessarily comparable because we'd be comparing October data for South Dakota to the nation. So they're not really comparable that way, but we try to, on this page, give you the most current data available for each respective place. So. Then back to the home page. I also want to mention we have the South Dakota e-labor bulletin, or electronic labor bulletin. And this is really the South Dakota Labor Bulletin is the Department of Labor and Regulations monthly newsletter release for largely employers, but anyone can subscribe and be on it. But this is always the most current issue, and we'll do an overview of the labor market in the state. And it has those links back to the economic snapshot that I mentioned. And we also have a barometer that compares on a line graph basis the different major trends. Job openings posted on SD Works, and new hires. New hires are reported to the Department of Labor and Regulation by employer. And you may be familiar with that because it's really in conjunction. The new hire program is in conjunction with the Department of Social Services, and it's for purposes of tracking child support payments. So, but that's, again, that data set gives us a powerful look into what's happening in the labor market, because to know who employers are hiring or how many is definitely a good indicator of the labor market. So it's a good resource. That's the three buttons on the home page that I wanted to point out. Then we will go into the career exploration and planning, which is why I think I was really invited here today. So I'll get down to business eventually. Just got to bear with me here. We have several career publications that are available from our office, and we started developing these quite a few years ago when we had a grant from America's Career Resource Network, or ACRN. It has long since gone by the wayside, unfortunately, but the funding that we did get at that time in an annual grant basis made it possible for us to develop some of these publications. And so now, with limited budget dollars and limited staff time because of budget cuts, because of the limited dollars, but we do our best to continue to update these and make them available. So we have Career Peaks, that's really just a little activity packet for students in grades kindergarten through second grade. We have Career Aware, that's for students in grades 3 through 5, and then Career Wonders for students in grade 5 through 8. And I will just mention that some of the employment reps in our own local offices have told me that they find these, especially the Career Peaks for younger students, handy, because if they are working with the client, the adult, a parent who has a child with, they can give them these little activity packets and let them, learn about a career, do a little word find or whatever related to the occupation or the career. So just mention that in case. And then they're free of charge, of course, to download from our office. So, and then looking at the different publications we have, and these are available for download from our website, or you can request them in print from our office, and all free of charge. We have a bookmark of internet addresses. Oh, this is not a good thing. I have a link I have to fix. But what the bookmark does is look at just different sites for reputable sites for labor market information, and one side of the bookmark focuses on career information, and it includes links for Career InfoNet and a lot of good resources for career exploration of other sites. And then Career Destinations we have as a publication, and what we designed that for is we were asked by some of the employment representatives in our local offices who help host career fairs in their areas, help their schools and so on. And what they were looking for was some publication to give students or job seekers ahead of time before going to the job fair, so that they kind of entered more knowing, be ready to make better use of the time at the job fair, kind of to learn what the steps are in career exploration and before attending, so that they could make better use of their time with employers at those job fairs. So that's what Career Destinations is about, or what we tried to make it about. The pocket resume is just a small little leaflet that literally contains, if a client fills it out, they can fold it up, put it in their pocket, and it's just exactly that, pocket size. And we did develop this because we were being told that employers on an increasing basis were asking applicants to complete a job application on site, so that they knew they were completing it and not having someone else do it. But if you've ever had to do that, it can be difficult to remember when you started a certain position or what your wage was and all that kind of thing. So this is kind of like a crib notes for the client to write that information down and then have it right with them in case they're asked to complete an application on site. The South Dakota Post-Secondary Graduate Outcomes RAC card, I'll talk about that system in a little bit, but that's obviously just a RAC card to promote that and give the URL or the website address for that system. The Hot Careers poster and flyer, and we'll cover those high demand, high wage occupations in more detail in a minute, but these are just a couple of resources. The flyer looks at what those high demand, high wage are. And the flyer breaks it out by different educational levels. So you'll see these are the high demand, high wage that require some post-secondary education, those that require associate degree, and so on. So those are a couple resources that we have available on those high demand, high wage occupations.
Folk rehab apparently isn't one of them.
Right.
Highway.
And then we'll get into the actual occupational data. And as I mentioned, this is the full table of what those occupations are that we consider high demand, high wage. And how this all comes about is our office completes every other year employment projections of the state. It starts with industry projections, and it's a long, drawn-out methodology and process that's all done in cooperation with the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. And the strong point of that is that it allows comparison across states. So you could look at the projected employment for any occupation in South Dakota to what's projected for the same occupation in North Dakota or Florida or Hawaii, and you'd be comparing apples to apples. It's that very tedious methodology allows for that. So what we do after our analysts complete the employment projections by occupation, we look at, they come up with what the base year will be, and the current round of projections uses a base year of 2014 and then projects it out to 2024 and looks at what those employment levels will be in 2024, and then we look at the percent change. And what we do for determining the high demand, high wage occupations is it has to be the average demand for workers, which that's that first column, has to be greater than the average demand for workers across all industries. And what average annual demand measures is not only this difference between what employment is going to grow, but it also looks at the total demand for workers and looks at replacement need as well. So if workers are retiring from the occupation or changing from that occupation to another occupation, say a registered nurse went back to school and became a physician's assistant, those kind of occupational transfers, we call them, all play into that too. So that average annual demand for workers is an estimate of how many workers will be needed on average over the projection period, on average each year, from 2014 to 2024, to replace or to fill job openings for registered nurses, whether that be new opening because the hospital is opening, for instance, or if it's a need to replace a current worker. So it's intended to be an overall look at what the demand for workers will be. So we look at that average for each occupation and compare it to what the average is for all occupations combined. And this time that average was 18 workers needed a year across all occupations. So anything greater than 18 then becomes high demand. It's just pretty simple methodology we use there, but it seems to work pretty well. And then the other thing we look at is high wage. Now wages are not projected, but they are completed in our office. We conduct a survey called the Occupational Employment Statistics Survey. We do that as well in cooperation with the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, so we have to meet all their strict guidelines for confidentiality of employers and reliability of the data and all that. So from that data that we gather from employers in that survey, we come up with average wage data. And so when we're doing the high demand, high wage occupations, what we do is look at the average wage across all occupations. And if it is, I should have closed Outlook, sorry about that. If it is higher than the average across all occupations, then it makes the high demand, high wage list. So occupations have to meet both that overall demand and the higher than average annual wage to make this list of high demand, high wage occupations. And this is the list that I was mentioning that our WIOA program uses for determining the approved training program. So they won't approve a program in most cases. There are some underlying factors as well. If they're getting employer input that tells them different than what our Outlook is showing or whatever, there are a few exceptions. But for the most part, a training field or a program has to be serving an occupation that would be on this high demand, high wage list before they would approve it on grant training dollars for it. We also include on here the South Dakota educational requirement, And those are based first and foremost on national determinations by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. What they say is the minimum level of education that would be needed to succeed in the occupation. Now, there are a few cases where we feel the situation in South Dakota is a little different than it is nationally, and so we alter a few of them or modify them for South Dakota, but for the most part, they track. You'll see here the registered nurses being an associate degree. That's one that our cabinet secretary has been questioning why it's not a bachelor's, and so that one may be changing here in the next round. Right now, what that's based on is in the past we've had the Board of Accountancy tell us that they've had, or Board of Nursing, sorry, have sat for and passed the RN exam with an associate's degree. So for now it's an associate degree, but that may be changing. So those do, we take other things into consideration in that educational requirement, and they are a changing target to some extent, but for the most part they follow national, what the U.S. office tells us. Okay, let's go back to...
So, Melody,
yes.
Could you just go back to that table
Sure.
that you had?
Okay.
I'm just noticing the SOC codes. Is
Yes.
that something that can be referenced to?
Excellent question. That stands for Standard Occupational Classification. Hopefully we have a footnote here at the bottom. Yes. And there's a link there that tells where you can get descriptions. But if you're familiar with the ONET online, do you use that at all? Okay.
You want to talk about the ONET?
Sure. The ONET is a very powerful database that the U.S. Department of Labor hosts. And the SOC or SOC occupations are basically what the structure we use in that occupational employment statistics survey that I mentioned that we conduct, and that it's done nationwide. But the OES survey that we do that helps us gather the wage data uses the SOC codes instead of ONET. And really all the difference is the number of digits. Where SOC codes have 6 digits, ONET has, I believe it's 8. So ONET will have this, if you looked up this code like 131161 in ONET, you would find that it had 2 additional digits, and there will be more breakout of even more detail. In other words, you'd have market research analysts and marketing specialists, and I don't know off the top of my head, but they'll just be even more specialized. But they do at least align so that you can, find this level in there too. So, and I'll go into the ONET. I'll try and remember to go into that. Just help me remember, if you would, a little later. And also, if you have questions about the projections or the wage, we have links here too, and we have technical notes pages out there that get into the nitty-gritty of because in wages we have just not an average, but we have percentile wages, a 10th, the 25th, and then the average and the 90th percentile, so the definitions pages and those technical notes cover all of that too. Let's see. I think then, I wanted to mention too that this is another recent change within the Department of Labor and Regulation. If you may have heard that we had in the past targeted occupations, and we had quite a few resources we had developed for those. Well, this year the department decided to just revert to how Labor Market Information Center has always referred to these as hot careers, based on just these 2 criteria of the overall demand for workers and the wages. So some of those good resources that we had developed for targeted occupations are now outdated because it was a different list of occupations. So I just wanted to mention that we hope to bring some of those back and do the information, the same resources, but on this list of occupations. So that's something to look forward to over the next few months. And again, we would feature it on our What's New page when those are available. We had profiles that kind of looked at a lot of the ONET information for that specific occupation, and other resources for more information on on people considering that occupation. That was one of the resources. We also had links for them so that anyone looking, say, at if they were looking for management analysts, in that profile it would include links right into SDWorks or the jobs database, so you could go look at what the current openings were in that actual occupation. Then I want to get into our virtual labor market data system. And this is basically, it's hosted by Geographic Solutions, the same company that I mentioned is going to host the new SDWorks that we'll be launching within the next few months. This is a very powerful database, and we had historical databases that were available online before that were a little simpler and actually easier to use in some ways, probably just because we were familiar with them. But the new site, that we call it our virtual data market system, is much more powerful and has a lot more capabilities. The downside of that is we're still learning it ourselves and trying to help our users find what they were used to finding before too. But I just want to show a couple of the resources that I think will be most helpful as far as career and career exploration and decision making. We can look down under data trends. If we go to employment and wage data and then occupational data, you'll see that you can find the occupational employment and wages and the occupational employment and projections. And those are the two data sets that I've mentioned as being particularly pertinent to looking at what the real labor market and the labor market conditions are for a certain occupation that's being explored, because that's a very important aspect to consider. You might love being whatever occupation, you might really excel at being an electrician, or that's the love, but if you're going to invest in the training dollars and your time to become an electrician, what are the chances you're going to find a job? So that labor market information is just a helpful and important step to consider, an important factor. So I want to go look at the employment projections, and all of the data sets within our virtual site have these same search options, and they all work much the same. It'll have an area, and it defaults normally to statewide or whatever the most general area is. But if you click on that, you'll see that you can see the other areas for which data is available. Now in this particular one, the employment projections, the sub-state or the metro area projections are not yet completed for the 2014-2024 period, just statewide are. We do those every other year, so right now our analysts are working on those sub-state or within South Dakota areas. So we would have to pick a different time frame to actually get to the area data. So I'm going to stick with South Dakota for right now, but I will show you how to get to the sub-state. So then you choose your period, and it defaults to the most current, so I'm going to leave that at 2014. And then if you click on where it says multiple occupations, if you leave it set as the default, you would see the projections for all information or for all occupations in that table down below. But here, if you click on the multiple occupations, you'll see there are many different ways to search for occupations. You can search by keyword. So let's say you wanted to look up an accountant. Just if you put in just a few letters and do a search, it will come up with you any that match that criteria, and then you can click on any of those that come up and see all of the information that we have available on that. So there's our employment projections for 2014 to 2024, the actual employment change and the percent change, and so on. You can graph it in a bar graph. All these options down here, you can read it in a narrative if you want, distribution graph by area. There are a lot of different options there of how you can do it. There's even frequently asked questions about that particular data. So a lot of options there that you can explore. The nice thing about if you want to work with data, like if you were comparing several occupations and wanted to download it to Excel and then do your own chart or something, you can do that, or you can print the information too. I I want to go back to how you choose this occupation because there's a lot of options here that will fit the bill better depending on just what it is you're looking for. You can do just an alphabetical listing of occupations and choose them that way. The best way to choose if you're looking for multiple occupations, I think, or if you wanted to get to all of the occupations, you can do this choice, the all occupations by level. And you can look at the major group, which are just that, just kind of roll-ups of the occupations in major categories or minor categories. But if you choose detailed occupations, it will show you all 840 of the detailed occupations that are in the standard occupational classification system. And depending on what you pick and what your connectivity is, you'll see that sometimes this takes a while to load. But eventually you'll get the table of all the occupations, and again you can export it to Excel so you could do about whatever you wanted with it. And you can choose here data detail, which if you want to look at the employment figures or the openings. So these data detail are good ways to zero in on just specifically what you're looking for. But like I mentioned, we do recommend that you consider not only employment levels or what growth is projected, but that average annual openings, because that does look at the total demand picture, estimating how many workers will be needed in the future, including replacement need for current workers who are retiring or dying or leaving the labor force for other reasons too. And then I wanted to mention too that these display options up here can make quite a difference in what you're seeing. So if you're not seeing what the data you want to see, and this comes into play especially in the wage information that we'll be looking at next, but take a look at those display options and see if you maybe want to choose something different here. Like you can choose what order they're sorted in by default, which records to display, whether you want to look at that percent change or the projected employment, so on. So sometimes if you're not seeing what you think you want to look at, take a look at those display options because they do have quite a few different options available. Are there any questions about the projections in general or the projections information on our website? You'll see that quite a few on this, the choices I made are confidential, and that all has to do with how many employers employ the occupation. As I mentioned earlier, we do have to meet some very strict guidelines that the Bureau of Labor Statistics has. If you ask me, sometimes they take it a little too far, how they think anybody could ever figure out who an employer is by some of the data, but if there's any possibility of any employer being revealed through the data, we have to mark it as confidential and not disclose that data. So they do meet a lot of those requirements.
Melody, I'm just noticing, in the occupation, let's say the first one, accountants and auditors, are you able to select that and will that pull up kind of the detailed information?
Yes.
Kind of like the essential job functions of that particular position?
Good question, yes. Yep. So you can choose that and again see all those options for that. So. Okay, well let's go on then and look at the wage data. So if we go back to the data trends, employment and wage data, and then occupation data, and we'll choose that first one, occupational employment and wages, or OES, and that's the program I mentioned that we collect the wage data on. And this too has area data, and this time we'll choose an area so you can get a feel for that. So we have balance of state areas, cross-state math, MSA, and that's for the Sioux City MSA, which is across the states, obviously, and then the metropolitan statistical areas. We do not have wage data available at the county level, and neither do we have projections data available at the county level, largely because it would not be disclosable for those confidentiality restrictions that I mentioned before, those safeguards that are in place. But let's look at the, if we choose metropolitan statistical area, we can choose Rapid City or Sioux Falls, and I'll just choose Rapid City. And then you'll see that you can look at what the wage data is specifically in that area for all of the occupations. And right now it's looking at all occupations that are available. We can again click on multiple occupations and see that those same options across the top, where we could look by group or alphabetical listing or by a specific code. If you know that 6-digit SOC code, you could look at it that way, or by level like I showed under the projections. Let's do a listing here and we'll look. Let's try the admin service managers. And this is where the display options can really come into play, because it shows the default is to show the 25th percentile and the 75th percentile. But if you look at the display options, you can change that, and again you can change the order. Here you could choose if you wanted if you don't want to worry about those percentile wages, you could look at just the mean or the average. There's also median, so you can choose what you want, just what you want to display, and then that way what you see or what you export to Excel or what you print is going to be just that information that you choose. And you can see the maps, the distribution of what you're looking at, and again, if you want to look at the narrative or whatever. Any questions about the wage data? That's the most commonly requested piece. The most commonly requested piece of information that our office gets is wages. We have employers, job seekers, people considering careers and want to know what the going wage rate is in a certain occupation, if it varies from one area of the state to another. And we get a lot of employers calling, want to set a wage and be, competitive in the labor market to hire a worker in that occupation. They'll want to know what the going rate is. So that's a very commonly requested piece of information. The wages reflect, for the most part, wage and salaried workers. Not as much, they do not reflect the self-employed wages, and they do not include benefits, like health insurance or whatever. It's just the actual wage paid. I want to mention one more piece of information about the wages that we have available. Another data set that we have is wages by educational level requirements, and school teachers and high school counselors love this piece of information because they think it helps convince students to stay in school. So what we do here, and this isn't saying that statistically, this isn't saying that anybody with less than a high school education in South Dakota is going to earn $23,518. But what this is remember when we were looking at the high demand, high wage occupations, and I mentioned that educational level required identified for each occupation. So what we do is calculate all the wages based on that educational requirement, and then this is an average. So what this is saying instead is that the average wage in occupations that require less than a high school education is $23,518. So you can see why high school counselors and teachers like this one, because it does convince, or help convince anyway, students that it does pay to stay in school. Now, the difference between an associate and a bachelor's degree, that doesn't make the argument quite so well. But so just wanted to point out that that's another data set we have available that is helpful in some situations. As I'm sure you've noticed as I've been talking, we have a lot of lingo and labor market information, a lot of terms and so on. So I wanted to point out that on our left-hand menu under references, you can go see the definitions, and you'll see an alphabetical list of all the definitions that we use, particularly in the wage areas, that percentile information that I was talking about. Here's one for the educational levels required, exactly what goes into each category. We try to think of, we try to put on this page definitions for all the terms used on our website or in the information that we provide. So if you ever find anything that's missing, please let me know and we'll get it added. We like having these out there ourselves because then we know we're all giving, whoever's requesting the information, we're all working from the same definitions. And a lot of it gets very technical when we have to meet Bureau of Labor Statistics standards. So a lot of the survey data that we collect gets nitty gritty as to what and what is not included and that kind of thing. So the other under references, you can look at program overviews that tell about each of the programs that we do in cooperation with the Bureau of Labor Statistics. That kind of tell that story about the comparability with other states' data because it's a national program and so on. I want to point out one other data set, and it's not really as directly related probably to career and exploration planning, but it's our most powerful data set that gets at county data. And that is the Quarterly Census of Employment and Wages, or the QCW program. And what that's based on is all employers in South Dakota who are liable under unemployment insurance laws and have to cover their workers for unemployment insurance benefits, so that if they have a layoff, the workers are eligible for unemployment insurance benefits. So that's a powerful data source because employers have to file with our department every quarter a report of quarterly wages and earnings. Every employee gets reported in what wages they were paid in that quarter. And that's collected, so we have locations of all employers. We know where they are by county and where the workers are and what their wages are. So you can imagine those reports in concert, all combined, are pretty powerful data set. So in the Quarterly Census of Employment and Wages, if we go again to our virtual site, you can look at industry data, quarterly census. So in this data set, you can look not only for statewide or the metro areas, but you can choose down to the county level. So if we want to look at, say, Beadle County, set that area, and it defaults to the most current. I'll just leave it there, but you can go back in time, back to, let's just go look. I forget how far back it goes. I think to 2000. Yeah, so you can look back in time at any of those quarters, or there's annual too. Go back to annual. Set the period. And then you can look at, you'll know the number of establishments, and that's a good source of information because we can look then too at how important small employers or those with 0 to 10 employees are in an area. But you can look at the number of establishments, what their total wages were, what the average weekly wage of workers in those establishments was, and so on. And you can also break it down by industry. This is looking at total industry, but you can, again, with selections across the top, much like when we looked at the occupations, You could look at all detailed all detailed industries, or what we call level 3. Okay, unfortunately, there's no data available by the county at that 3-digit level. But if you picked a larger county, you would see what information was available on number of establishments and workers and so on in that. I think if we look at the sector level, we'll get some data, hopefully. Nope. It's not cooperating with me. Let's go pick a bigger county. Okay, I must be picking something that isn't right. Anyway, you'll see that you can, like I mentioned, this goes down to that county level where projections and wage data we do not have at the county level. So if you want to get a more regional look, a closer look to home, this is a good data set. I want to also point out back on the Labor Market Information Center, the main website, if we go to references and related sites, we have a lot of sites listed out here, and we mentioned ONET, and I'll go into that in a minute. There's just a lot of different links we have here for other sources of labor market and economic information, career information. And the first one I just want to mention is that we have links on a map to labor market information for other states. So if you wanted to look at any of the data in South Dakota, say you had a client thinking of either settling here or in Minnesota or a neighboring state, after completing a training program or whatever, and wanted to go find the labor market information on the same occupations in that state, you could come to this page and go to our sister agency or their site to explore that information. Okay, let's go back to related sites, and we have lights. Here are the sites for career and job seeking information, and we'll go take a look at ONET Online that Kim asked about.
And Melody,
yes.
to access, let's say we're not in the Department of Labor website, how would you access the ONET site?
Just ONET, let's see, what is the ONET.online, I believe it is, yeah. ONET Online, all is one word, .org. Always get you there. So, and as I mentioned, on the Department of Labor site too, under a lot of those job seeking tools, there were, links to it directly too. And if you're not familiar with ONET Online, if you type in an occupation, there is virtually tons of information on the occupation. So let's go look at accountants, for example. So all of these different ones, you can get a summary level, you can get a detail level, you can get a custom level, and all these little ones down here, from tasks, look at what people do on the job, specifics, to ratings of how important each of those specific tasks is to the overall occupation. You can look at abilities required. All of these links are all, there's just tons of information out there that's helpful. And there's good resources on ONET too to explain what those categories all mean and what all that means. So very powerful resource. And another thing I wanted to mention is that some of you may have been familiar with a program called South Dakota Career Insight that we used to have available online. And unfortunately, because of those dwindling budgets and the budget cuts we've had and the staff cuts we've had, we could no longer support that because it came to the Bureau of Information and Telecommunications, or BIT. programmed that and maintained it for us. And it just got to be too expensive to pay them to maintain it with all the requirements they have to meet security issues and all of that. Even when we weren't making enhancements on our end, just to keep it up to current standards and everything, got too expensive. So we had to do away with Career Insight. As a replacement or semi-replacement, what we're working on right now, in fact, I was working on it literally just when I came over here, is we have a South Dakota interest survey that is a 108 question or career assessment, and it was developed for us by the head of the counseling department at Northern State University several years ago. And we have a paper option right now that users can take online under our career exploration. If you go to the career publications that you can download, you'll see the South Dakota interest survey. So here's that downloadable one. And users can take it. They answer all these work-related activities rate on a scale of 1 to 5, how well they would like doing that. And there's instructions then to score it themselves. Here's the score sheet. You have to transfer all your answers on that. What we're doing right now, because we had to very sadly say goodbye to our South Dakota Career Insight, is we're making what will be an Excel version of this that will automatically score it for users, score their interests, tell them what their top 3 highest interest areas are. And then we're developing web pages, and that's where I come into the project, that will list for each of the 6 main Holland areas, or RESIC, if you're familiar with those categories: realistic, enterprising, investigative, occupations, and so on. For each of those interest areas, it will list all the occupations in that interest area, and then they'll be clickable. So you can click on any of those occupations, and it will take you to our virtual site that we looked at, and we'll link you right into the information on that occupation within that virtual system. So we hope to have that launched hopefully by mid-January. Early February. So that's a tool that will be coming to kind of sort of replace Career Insight. It won't do all the things that Career Insight did, but we hope that it will be a good alternative for those people working with individuals who really don't have a clue what they want to do as far as, career interests or something. That a career assessment is a starting point. And there are very, very many other tools, of course, to do that, but we want to be able to continue offering just one on our website, and then get people to the next step of looking at that labor market information, or that real life component of what what the wages are, what the outlook is, that kind of thing. Where in South Dakota it's employed, and so on. So I think that's a quick look at the resources that the department and the labor market information specifically have to offer. Is there anything I missed that anyone can think of, or any questions? I'd sure welcome anybody too, if you get a chance to play with any of these resources and have any feedback on them, ways we can improve them. We'd certainly be interested in getting that feedback. We would appreciate that. Or if you have questions, like I said, the virtual system is still kind of new even to us. Every once in a while someone will ask a question. It's like, well, I know it's in there. How do we get there? So we're still learning it ourselves. So if any of you need help, certainly give us a call, and we're there to help you figure it out, and also give us the feedback on it. So any questions, anything you can think of, Kim, that I didn't cover that I was supposed to?
No. What I would like to do, Melody, is just maybe go around to all of the sites and ask them if they have any questions. So
Sounds great.
can I get you back here on Aberdeen DHS? Any questions for Melody? How about Aberdeen Northern State University Library? How about Brookings DHS?
No questions from Brookings.
Okay. How about Chamberlain, DHS?
No questions.
Okay. How about Huron, DHS?
Oh. No questions.
Okay. How about Mitchell, DHS?
No questions in Mitchell.
Okay. How about Pier, DHS?
We do have one question. I'm going to open it up to Nancy here.
Yeah, you had talked about the career interest inventory. What I saw, it looks like there was no pictures involved. Is there the potential that sometime you would add one that would have pictures of the different careers or interest in jobs?
That's a possibility. Unfortunately, Career Insight did have that, and there were even videos that went with a lot of the occupations. So I'd have to think about that, how we could incorporate that with the new low budget way we have to do it. But it's an excellent point, especially for, since young people and everybody likes pictures. So that's an excellent thought. So I will think about that and take it to our management and see if we can come up with something.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent
Anybody
question.
else? Okay, that's all for us.
Okay. About Rapid City, DHS?
Go ahead, speak.
Just one question. By the way, I want to compliment you on a wonderful website.
Thank you.
Upgrade. It's very nice. What kind of outreach are you doing with that website? For instance, are you, especially the information for children? Are you, for instance, sending that to schools or doing any kind of outreach?
We have some excellent contacts at the Department of Education who are sending anything we share with them, they'll send out on listservs and so on to school teachers and counselors. So that's been very powerful for us.
Good.
And as far as the department's launch of the website, we did a press release on that and so on. But any other opportunities you can think of that we could be utilizing that we're not, we'd certainly appreciate that feedback and ideas too.
And Melody, you had mentioned the newsletter earlier too. There is an opportunity for those that are interested in receiving the newsletter to sign up for that.
Absolutely.
And maybe if you want to just kind of walk through real quick of
Sure.
where people can access that to sign up. And that information is made available monthly, correct?
Correct. It comes out normally the fourth Friday of every month. But if you click on that e-labor bulletin icon on our homepage in the top bar kind of, you'll see where you can subscribe down at the bottom here. Subscribe to the e-labor bulletin. And how that works, you put your email in here and just put please subscribe or whatever. And how it works beyond that is you will get just an email every month when we publish a new issue, just a brief email with just a link to that e-labor bulletin page letting you know that a new issue is available. So, and we try to, at least 4 times a year, we have a cover article, we call it, that looks at some aspect of the labor market that's new, like when we had when the new employment projections for 2014 to 2024 were completed, we had an article that looked at the highlights of those projections and what the future was expected to hold for occupations in South Dakota. So that's the labor bulletin.
Okay. Another question from Rapid City.
Okay.
I didn't see that on any of the things that you put up for us to see today, but you did have one that had average wage, and I don't know if it's BLS.gov or if it's ONET, but I've seen where they put median wage. Could you talk a little about why they would post median and not average, or average and not median? What's the merit of that?
Okay. Every once in a while we'll get average or mean is obviously more requested, but every once in a while we'll get a request where someone wants to look at median wages, or in other words, how many workers are above that level and how many are below, or it's that point where there's equal numbers either way, above or below. And that is actually one of the data sets, I believe, that we can look at in those display options. Let me go back in and make sure, but it should be the data categories. I might have to get back to you on that. I thought it was under the one of the options you could choose. You have to choose enhanced wage percentiles in this wage columns to show, and then I think we can get to, yes, there's median. So then if we set those options, then you can see the median. Did that answer your question?
Well, yes and no. I guess the no part is, why would you care about what the median is? I mean, what would be the point of that?
I guess I really can't answer that. We just know that we do get some questions for it. I can't answer that. I know that some employers want to look at the median or they want to know how many are above and below that. I don't know whether they want to compare those ratios to their own workers, how many of theirs are above and below. I don't really know. I can't answer that, but it is something we get on occasion, but average or mean is much more popularly asked.
Thank you.
Probably one of the number crunchers in our office, the number people could tell you why median is important, but I cannot. I'm sorry. I can get your email address if you want and have one of our number gurus get back to you.
No, I guess I can just live with the ambiguity. Thank you.
Okay.
And if there's any questions, I will send out Melody Lane's contact information.
Okay. Sounds great.
If that's okay. Email address following the training to everyone.
Sure.
Okay. Any further questions, Rapid City DHS? Okay. How about Rapid City Department of Labor?
We do not have any questions.
Jesus.
Okay. Thank you.
Somebody die over there.
How about Sioux Falls DHS 1?
Somebody's hacking along. We have no questions. Thanks, Kim.
How about the Sioux Falls DHS? Okay. How about the rehab center in Sioux Falls? Any questions?
We're good, thank you.
Okay. How about Spearfish DHS?
No questions.
Okay. How about Watertown?
We're all in conclusion that we want to go back to our office and look at it more closely.
I just kind of monkey around with it. You know, if there's any questions that you have, either feel free to contact me, and then I can kind of work with Melody, just kind of as that liaison too as well. And last but not least, Yankton DHS. Any questions?
Yankton has no questions. Thanks.
Okay. Right. Well, I would like to thank everyone for time and being part of this training today. Again, if you have any questions, you can feel free to email me. I will be sending out Melody Lane's contact information to everyone following the training. Again, the DDN is being recorded and will be made available on our Division of Rehabilitation Services website under the Provider Resources tab. The DDN is scheduled to go till 4 p.m. Following the training, I will go ahead and cancel the bridge. However, in the meantime, I do request that you mute the sites and turn down the volume. So, anything else, Janet, before we wrap up?
Just to let everyone know that this has been recorded, but it won't be available out on our DRS site probably for a couple of weeks, because it takes a little while to get it downloaded from the place that records it for us and then getting it out on our system. So it could be 1 to 2 weeks before it's available out there. But that's all.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.